Here's something that might surprise you. Every single weekend, millions of Americans willingly drive to a massive warehouse, spend hours wandering through aisles of power tools and paint cans, and then voluntarily undertake back-breaking labor in their own homes. They could hire someone to do it. They could leave their house exactly as it is, but they don't. And there's one company that has orchestrated this entire cultural phenomenon so masterfully that it's become a $356 billion empire. I'm talking about the Home Depot, and what you're about to discover is that this isn't just a story about a hardware store. This is a story about how a single business model fundamentally rewired American consumer behavior, created an entirely new economic ecosystem, and convinced an entire nation that spending their free time installing drywall is somehow the key to the American dream. But here's where it gets really interesting. While everyone thinks they understand Home Depot, almost nobody recognizes the sophisticated psychological and economic framework that keeps people coming back weekend after weekend, project after project, year after year. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden mechanics of America's home improvement obsession. And I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you'll never look at that orange apron the same way again. We're going to explore the three-legged stool strategy that turned a simple retail concept into an economic juggernaut. Uncover why this company might be more critical to American infrastructure than you ever imagined, and reveal the future trajectory that could reshape how every single home in America functions over the next decade.
Let's start by understanding what Home Depot actually accomplished, because calling it just a hardware store is like calling the internet just a communication tool. It's technically accurate, but misses the entire revolutionary impact. When Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank opened those first two stores in Atlanta, Georgia on June 22, 1979, they weren't just opening retail locations. They were detonating a bomb under the entire home improvement industry, and the shockwaves are still reverberating today. Picture the landscape before Home Depot existed. If you needed supplies for a home project, you went to your local hardware store. These were typically small, family-owned businesses tucked into downtown areas or neighborhood corners. They might stock a few thousand products at most. The owner knew your name, knew what you bought last time, and the entire shopping experience was personal and localized. It was charming, it was intimate, and it was completely inefficient for anyone trying to tackle a serious home improvement project. You need to visit multiple stores, wait for special orders, pay premium prices because of limited inventory, and hope that the person behind the counter actually knew what they were talking about when you asked for advice. Marcus and Blank looked at this fragmented system and recognized an opportunity that everyone else had missed. They understood something fundamental about American psychology. People didn't just want to improve their homes, they wanted to feel empowered to improve their homes themselves. But the existing retail infrastructure was actively preventing that empowerment. So they asked themselves a radical question. What if we created a space so large, so comprehensively stocked, and so focused on customer education that anyone walking through those doors could realistically tackle any project they could imagine? The first Home Depot stores were approximately 60,000 square feet. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the size of a small shopping mall dedicated entirely to home improvement. They stocked 25,000 products from day one. 25,000! The average hardware store at the time might have carried 3,000 to 5,000 items. This wasn't an incremental improvement in selection. This was an order of magnitude shift in what was even possible for a consumer to accomplish. Today, the average Home Depot store spans 105,000 square feet of indoor retail space and stocks over 35,000 products in the physical location alone. Online, that selection explodes to over 1 million products available for purchase. But here's what most people miss when they analyze Home Depot's success. The size and selection weren't the revolution. Those were just the tools of the revolution. The actual revolution was philosophical. Marcus and Blank built their entire company on what they called the inverted pyramid principle. In a traditional corporate structure, executives sit at the top, middle management in the middle, and frontline workers at the bottom supporting everything above them. Home Depot literally flipped this upside down. In their model, customers sit at the top of the pyramid. The associates who directly serve customers sit right below them. Everyone else in the organization, including executives, exists to support those customer-facing associates. This wasn't just corporate rhetoric. This was baked into every operational decision, every hiring practice, every training program. The philosophy was simple. If you put customers and associates first, financial success becomes an inevitable byproduct rather than a constant struggle. This brings us to what Home Depot calls the three-legged stool, and understanding this framework is absolutely critical to understanding why this company has become so deeply embedded in American economic life. The three legs represent three distinct customer segments, and Home Depot's genius was recognizing that these segments weren't in competition with each other, but were actually synergistic and reinforcing. The first leg is the DIY customer, the do-it-yourself homeowner, who represents what most people think of when they picture a Home Depot shopper. This is the weekend warrior, the person watching YouTube tutorials at midnight trying to figure out how to install a toilet, the homeowner who gets a strange satisfaction from telling dinner party guests that they built their own deck. In 2024, this segment accounted for 42% of sales at Home Depot's largest online store. The second leg is the pro customer, the professional contractors, builders, remodelers, and service providers who use Home Depot as their supply chain backbone. This segment is absolutely crucial because it represents high-volume, repeat business. These aren't people buying a hammer once every 5 years. These are professionals purchasing materials from multiple job sites, sometimes multiple times per week. Analysis has shown that professional contractors have historically accounted for more than half of all purchases at Home Depot stores. Think about that for a moment. More than half of the revenue in a store that most people think of as a consumer DIY destination actually comes from professionals. The third leg is perhaps the most psychologically interesting, the DIFM customer, which stands for Do It For Me. These are customers who want the results of home improvement, but have zero interest in actually performing the labor themselves. They don't want to learn how to tile a bathroom. They don't find satisfaction in spending their Saturday afternoon covered in joint compound. They just want a nicer bathroom. Home Depot recognized that turning away these customers because they didn't fit the DIY stereotype would be leaving enormous value on the table. So they built what is now the industry's largest installation business, essentially creating a marketplace that connects customers with trusted service providers while Home Depot supplies the materials and takes a cut of the entire transaction.
Now we need to talk about why Americans became so obsessed with this model. Because Home Depot didn't just offer a better way to buy hammers, they tapped into something much deeper in the American psyche. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The DIY ethos in America isn't just about saving money or learning skills. It's fundamentally tied to concepts of self-reliance, personal agency, and the idea that you can shape your own environment rather than being passive within it. This connects directly to frontier mythology, immigrant bootstrap narratives, and the entire American self-conception as a nation of builders and makers rather than aristocrats and inheritors. Home Depot didn't create this cultural current, but they became the most visible and accessible channel for it. They made home improvement aspirational in a way it had never been before. Before Home Depot, tackling a major home project yourself was either a sign of poverty, meaning you couldn't afford to hire someone, or a niche hobby for a particular type of person. Home Depot reframed it as a form of empowerment and even status. They positioned themselves not just as a place to buy supplies, but as partners in personal transformation. The implicit message became the person who can renovate their own home is more capable, more resourceful, more authentically American than someone who hires out every task. This repositioning was brilliantly timed with broader cultural and economic trends. Home ownership rates were rising, the suburbs were expanding, cable television and later the internet were making home improvement content more accessible than ever before. Shows like This Old House were demonstrating that these projects were actually achievable by regular people with the right guidance and tools. Home Depot positioned themselves at the intersection of all these trends and essentially said, "We are your partner in achieving the version of yourself you see in these aspirational scenarios." But aspiration alone doesn't build a $356 billion company. Home Depot also had to deliver on practical value, and this is where their operational model becomes fascinating. They recognized that customers were attracted to them for two distinct categories of reasons, and both had to be satisfied for the business model to work long-term. The practical reasons were straightforward: selection, price, and convenience. Home Depot's mission statement explicitly commits to providing the broadest selection of products at the most competitive prices. Their massive scale allows them to negotiate favorable terms with suppliers and pass those savings to customers. The one-stop shop model means you can complete an entire project with a single trip rather than visiting multiple specialty stores. For someone planning a kitchen renovation, the time and frustration savings of finding everything in one location is genuinely valuable. But the emotional and experiential reasons are equally important, and this is where Home Depot has had to evolve continuously. They realized early on that people weren't just shopping for products, they were shopping for confidence. The worst feeling in the world for a DIY customer is standing in an aisle surrounded by dozens of options, having no idea which one is appropriate for your specific situation, and being unable to find anyone knowledgeable to help. Home Depot invested heavily in associate training and positioned their staff as experts who could guide customers through decision-making processes. They redesigned checkout experiences to reduce wait times and friction. They revamped returns processes because they understood that DIY projects often involve trial and error, and customers needed to feel safe making mistakes without financial penalty. This focus on the customer experience extends into the digital realm in ways that reveal Home Depot's understanding of changing consumer behavior. They recognize that the shopping journey often starts online, even if it ends in the physical store. Someone gets inspired by a project, starts researching online, watches tutorials, reads reviews, and only then visits the store to make purchases. Home Depot built out resources to support every stage of this journey. They created project calculators that help customers estimate how much material they need. They developed planning tools that let you visualize projects before starting. They maintained more than 2 million active online customers who log into the site at least once a week, treating it less like a transactional website and more like an ongoing resource for their home improvement journey. The home improvement trend in America right now is being shaped by some interesting macroeconomic forces that help explain Home Depot's current position. High interest rates and economic uncertainty have made it harder for people to move to new homes, which paradoxically increases investment in existing homes. When you can't afford to buy your dream house, you're more motivated to turn your current house into something closer to your dream house. Record levels of home equity mean that even middle-class homeowners often have substantial paper wealth tied up in their property, which psychologically makes spending $10,000 or $20,000 on a kitchen renovation feel more justifiable. You're not really spending money, you're investing in an asset you already own.
Now, we need to talk about something that most consumers never see, but which represents some of Home Depot's most impressive strategic advantages: the professional infrastructure they've built to capture the contractor market. Remember, professionals represent more than half of Home Depot's business, and these customers have completely different needs than weekend DIY shoppers. A homeowner buying lumber for a backyard deck is making a one-time purchase. A contractor building houses needs lumber delivered to multiple job sites on a consistent schedule. A homeowner renting a pressure washer for an afternoon has different expectations than a contractor who needs a boom lift for a 3-week commercial project. Home Depot created an entirely parallel service ecosystem designed specifically for professional customers, and this is where their scale becomes a genuine competitive moat. The Pro Extra Loyalty program isn't just a discount card. It's a comprehensive business management tool that provides volume-based pricing on thousands of products, tracks purchases across projects for easier job costing, offers dedicated customer support lines that bypass general consumer queues, and provides access to business credit solutions. The message to contractors is clear. If you consolidate your purchasing through Home Depot, we'll make your business operations significantly more efficient. But the real game changer for professional customers is the tool and equipment rental infrastructure. Home Depot operates one of the largest equipment rental networks in the industry, and this represents a fascinating business model in itself. The inventory ranges from basic consumer tools like carpet cleaners and pressure washers to industrial construction equipment, including mini excavators, boom lifts, scissor lifts, and forklifts. For a small contractor or even a medium-sized construction company, purchasing this equipment outright represents an enormous capital expenditure. A single boom lift can cost $50,000 or more. Tying up that much capital in equipment that might only be needed for specific projects is financially inefficient. Home Depot's rental model allows these businesses to access necessary equipment exactly when they need it, without the carrying costs of ownership. This creates a powerful lock-in effect. Once a contractor establishes Home Depot as their primary equipment rental source, it becomes increasingly logical to also purchase materials from the same location. You're already there picking up the excavator, why not grab the concrete and rebar for the foundation while you're at it? Home Depot reinforces this behavior by co-locating rental facilities with retail locations and by offering services like the New Projects tool, which helps contractors price, plan, and execute entire jobs through a unified platform. The goal is to become so deeply embedded in professional workflows that switching to a competitor becomes unthinkably disruptive. The Do-It-For-Me segment represents perhaps the most brilliant strategic expansion because it allows Home Depot to capture customers who would otherwise never shop there. Someone with zero interest in home improvement projects and would normally hire an independent contractor now becomes a Home Depot customer because Home Depot operates the marketplace connecting them to service providers. Home Depot supplies the materials, vets the installers, manages the transaction, and takes a percentage of the entire job value. It's essentially the Amazon Marketplace model applied to home installation services. And the acquisition of companies like Temco, an appliance delivery and installation business, shows how seriously Home Depot takes this segment. The interconnected retail strategy, which Home Depot sometimes calls the seamless shopping revolution, represents their response to the existential threat posed by pure e-commerce competitors. Amazon can offer vast selection and convenient delivery, but they can't offer the ability to walk into a physical location, examine products in person, speak with knowledgeable staff, and take items home immediately. Home Depot recognized that their network of more than 2,300 physical stores wasn't a liability in the digital age, but potentially their greatest asset if deployed correctly. They reposition stores as both retail locations and fulfillment centers, enabling services like buy online pickup in store, same-day delivery, and curbside pickup. The physical network became the solution to the last-mile delivery problem that plagues pure online retailers. This strategy has allowed Home Depot to maintain dominance in online sales, despite facing competition from digital native competitors. They're projected to reach $23.6 billion in web sales in 2024, more than double their closest competitor Lowe's at $11.3 billion. But what's even more impressive is how they've integrated digital and physical experiences. Customers use the mobile app to navigate store layouts and locate specific products. They can check real-time inventory before visiting. They can start a project plan online, save it, and then access it in-store when making purchases. The digital and physical aren't separate channels, but a unified experience optimized for customer convenience.
Now we need to address the uncomfortable realities that Home Depot faces, because no company, regardless of size or success, operates without vulnerabilities and limitations. Understanding these weaknesses is crucial for understanding where Home Depot might be heading in the future and what challenges could potentially disrupt their dominance. The first major challenge is competitive pressure from multiple directions simultaneously, and each of these threats targets different aspects of Home Depot's business model. Lowe's, their primary direct competitor, has demonstrated some concerning trends from Home Depot's perspective. While Home Depot leads in absolute web sales volume, Lowe's has achieved a higher 5-year compound annual growth rate in web sales per store, 26.5% compared to Home Depot's 21%. This suggests that Lowe's is figuring out digital retail more efficiently relative to their physical footprint. Additionally, Lowe's has outpaced Home Depot in comparable sales growth for 2 consecutive quarters, indicating they're gaining momentum in head-to-head competition. This matters because in retail, momentum can become self-reinforcing as success funds further investment in customer experience improvements. The professional segment faces threats from specialty wholesale suppliers like Builders First Source, which focus exclusively on serving contractors and can therefore optimize every aspect of their operation for professional needs. These companies don't need to balance the conflicting requirements of retail consumers and professional contractors. They can offer highly specialized products, extremely streamlined logistics, and pricing structures specifically designed for high-volume commercial projects. For large contractors working on major developments, the value proposition of a specialized supplier can be compelling enough to pull business away from Home Depot despite the convenience of their one-stop model. E-commerce giants, particularly Amazon, represent perhaps the most existential long-term threat. Amazon is systematically moving into categories that were historically the domain of specialty retailers, and home improvement is no exception. They've achieved 13.2% dollar share in outdoor power equipment as of recent data, demonstrating that customers are increasingly comfortable purchasing even relatively high-ticket, technically complex items sight unseen through online channels. Amazon's advantages in logistics, customer data, and platform infrastructure are formidable. While they can't replicate Home Depot's physical footprint, they don't need to if they can convince customers that the convenience of delivery outweighs the value of in-person shopping. Labor relations represent another significant vulnerability that has generated negative press and operational disruption. Home Depot Workers United, a unionization effort in Philadelphia, filed complaints with the National Labor Relations Board, alleging that management used surveillance and intimidation tactics to discourage organizing. Additional legal complaints claim that management failed to comply with Philadelphia's Fair Workweek law, which requires providing written advance work schedules and good faith estimates of working hours. These labor disputes matter not just because of potential legal liability, but because they threaten the customer service culture that Home Depot has positioned as a core differentiator. If employees feel mistreated or undervalued, that dissatisfaction inevitably manifests in customer interactions. The company's financial performance is extraordinarily sensitive to macroeconomic conditions, particularly the housing market and consumer confidence. Management has acknowledged that consumer uncertainty and sustained pressure in the housing sector disproportionately impact home improvement demand. This sensitivity cuts both ways. When the economy is strong and home values are rising, Home Depot tends to outperform. But during economic downturns or housing market corrections, they can underperform dramatically. This cyclicality makes long-term financial planning more challenging and means that Home Depot's stock performance tends to be more volatile than less economically sensitive businesses. There's also an interesting vulnerability related to weather and external events. Home Depot's revenue is partially dependent on disaster-driven demand. Hurricanes, floods, and major storms create immediate spikes in sales of generators, pumps, repair materials, and remediation equipment. Management specifically cited a lack of significant storm activity in one quarter as a primary cause for missing sales expectations. This creates a perverse incentive structure where the company financially benefits from natural disasters, which is ethically uncomfortable, and also means that a particularly quiet hurricane season can impact quarterly results. Cybersecurity represents a modern vulnerability that all large retailers face. A breach occurred in 2023 when a third-party software vendor accidentally leaked the names, work emails, and user IDs of approximately 10,000 employees. While this particular incident was relatively contained, it highlighted the risks created by complex technology ecosystems and third-party dependencies. A more serious breach affecting customer financial data or personal information could be catastrophic both financially and reputationally. Finally, there's an interesting vulnerability related to geographic concentration. Home Depot remains heavily dependent on the United States market for revenue, which creates exposure to U.S.-specific economic fluctuations, regulatory changes, and consumer behavior shifts. While they operate in Canada and Mexico, their international presence is modest compared to the scale of their domestic operations. This concentration means that any broad negative trend in the U.S. housing market or consumer spending hits Home Depot with full force, whereas a more geographically diversified company might be partially insulated by strength in other regions.
So where is all of this heading? What is the future of Home Depot, and by extension, the future of American home improvement, actually look like? The strategic direction becomes clear when you examine where the company is allocating capital and attention. The professional segment is unequivocally the priority. The acquisition of SRS Distribution represents the most significant strategic move in recent years. SRS is a specialty distributor focused on serving professional contractors with products like roofing, landscaping, and pool supplies. This acquisition isn't just about adding revenue. It's about fundamentally strengthening Home Depot's competitive position against specialized wholesalers that were pulling professional business away from the general retail model. The logic is straightforward. Professional contractors represent high-volume, repeat customers with predictable purchasing patterns. Capturing a larger share of professional spending provides more stable revenue than relying on discretionary consumer projects. By combining Home Depot's existing retail infrastructure with SRS's specialized distribution capabilities, they're creating a professional services ecosystem that becomes increasingly difficult for competitors to replicate. This is particularly important as the skilled trades face a labor shortage, which paradoxically increases the value and purchasing power of the professionals who remain in these industries. Technology integration is the second major pillar of Home Depot's future strategy, and this goes far beyond simply having a functional website. The partnership with Google Cloud is enabling artificial intelligence applications across multiple aspects of the business. AI-driven inventory management has improved stock accuracy by 15%, which might not sound revolutionary until you consider that Home Depot manages hundreds of millions of dollars in inventory across thousands of locations. A 15% improvement in accuracy translates to millions in reduced carrying costs and fewer instances of stockouts that drive customers to competitors. Autonomous mobile robots deployed in distribution centers have increased picking efficiency by up to 50% in some facilities. This matters because fulfillment speed is increasingly a competitive differentiator. Customers expect same-day or next-day delivery, and the only way to profitably deliver on that expectation is through ruthless operational efficiency. Home Depot is investing in smaller distribution centers closer to urban areas specifically to enable faster last-mile delivery. The goal of reaching 90% of the U.S. population with next-day or same-day delivery has largely been achieved, which represents a massive logistical accomplishment for a company dealing with products as varied as screws and refrigerators. The digital tools for professional customers are becoming increasingly sophisticated. The Pro Extra platform now offers job management features, project estimation tools, and integration with accounting software. The new Projects tool helps contractors price entire jobs by automatically calculating material requirements and costs based on project specifications. These aren't just nice-to-have conveniences, they're becoming essential infrastructure for running a contracting business efficiently. By embedding themselves deeply into professional workflows through technology, Home Depot is creating switching costs that go beyond simple price comparisons. Sustainability is emerging as a significant trend that Home Depot is positioning itself to capitalize on. They've set aggressive targets, including zero waste to landfill by 2030 and a 25% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. The partnership with Ford to implement electric semi-trucks in their logistics fleet isn't just about environmental responsibility, it's about operational efficiency, as electric vehicles have lower operating costs than diesel alternatives. More importantly, consumer demand for energy-efficient home improvements and sustainable products is growing rapidly. Home Depot's assortment is shifting to emphasize items like high-efficiency HVAC systems, solar installations, smart home technology that optimizes energy usage, and sustainable building materials. The smart home category represents a potentially transformative growth opportunity. As homes become more technologically integrated with voice-controlled systems, automated climate control, security integration, and appliance connectivity, Home Depot is positioning itself as the destination for both the products and the expertise to implement these systems. This is particularly clever because smart home technology naturally lends itself to both DIY installation for tech-savvy customers and professional installation for those who want the benefits without the complexity. Workforce development through the Path to Pro initiative addresses both a social need and a business need. The skilled trades are facing a demographic crisis as experienced workers retire faster than new workers enter the field. By offering boot camp training that covers tool usage, job site safety, and fundamental construction skills, Home Depot is essentially creating its own customer pipeline. Graduates of these programs are more likely to become professional contractors who then become high-value Home Depot customers. It's a long-term investment in ecosystem development disguised as workforce training. However, the challenges facing Home Depot are substantial enough that success is far from guaranteed. The housing market sensitivity remains a fundamental vulnerability, and with interest rates elevated and economic uncertainty persistent, the near-term outlook for major home improvement spending is constrained. Management has already trimmed full-year profit expectations and is anticipating adjusted earnings per share to fall approximately 5% year-over-year in fiscal year 2025. This represents the practical impact of macroeconomic headwinds on even the most well-positioned companies. The competitive dynamics are intensifying rather than stabilizing. Lows demonstrating stronger comparable sales growth is a warning signal that Home Depot cannot take market leadership for granted. The digital acceleration by competitors means that Home Depot must continuously invest in technology and user experience just to maintain their current position, let alone expand it. The emergence of Amazon in categories like outdoor power equipment shows that entirely new competitors can establish significant market share surprisingly quickly in the digital era. The question of whether Home Depot can maintain the cultural and operational coherence that drove their initial success becomes more challenging as the company grows larger and more complex. The inverted pyramid philosophy and the three-legged stool strategy work brilliantly when everyone in the organization understands and buys into these frameworks. But maintaining that cultural consistency across 475,000 employees, 2,300 locations, and increasingly complex digital platforms requires constant effort and vigilance. Labor disputes suggest that at least in some locations, the gap between stated values and actual employee experience has grown problematic. The ultimate trajectory of Home Depot will depend on whether they can successfully execute on multiple simultaneous transformations, strengthening professional services capabilities, achieving true seamless integration between digital and physical retail, maintaining cost leadership while investing heavily in technology and sustainability, and navigating macroeconomic volatility without sacrificing long-term strategic positioning. No company in history has accomplished all of these objectives simultaneously at this scale, which makes Home Depot's next decade absolutely fascinating from a strategic perspective. What's clear is that Home Depot represents far more than a place to buy power tools. It's a critical piece of American economic infrastructure, generating $35 billion in GDP, supporting hundreds of thousands of direct jobs and millions of indirect jobs through the multiplier effect, and enabling the residential investment that maintains and improves the nation's housing stock. The company's success or failure ripples through suppliers, contractors, homeowners, and entire communities in ways that aren't immediately visible but are economically profound. Understanding Home Depot means understanding how modern retail, American consumer psychology, and economic infrastructure intersect to create the physical environment that surrounds us every single day. And that's why this orange-aproned empire deserves far more attention than most people ever give it.